get into one topic that I was thinking about last night. So last night, sadly, the Texas Tech Red Raiders fell short in the national championship, the NCAA basketball national championship game. Great game.
Fantastic game. By the way, against popular opinion heading in, no one was looking forward to like the actual style of this game because you had two defensive teams that were going at it. It's like, it's going to be 45-30. That was awesome.
The over-under was 115, and it made sense. But, the teams put up a great fight, and I know this is probably not a popular opinion. That's not going to win me friends and influence people, but I do think that Virginia was probably the better team.
They're probably the best team in the country.
They're probably the best team in the country. So Texas Tech, nothing to hang their head about.
Absolutely not.
I was actually in New Orleans with a bunch of tech. My group was with a bunch of tech grads. Mm-hmm. And so we went to a sports bar on Saturday night, and that was ludicrous. They were absolutely going nuts.
That's awesome.
For that game against Michigan State. So they fall short, but obviously it's an unbelievable accomplishment just to make it to the national championship game for Texas Tech, for little old ding-dong Texas Tech, right? Never even made a Final Four before, and then they make it to a title game and go to overtime in a title game.
Yeah.
Amazing.
UTEP still claims the only national title in basketball in Texas.
That's absolutely right. So, but it got me thinking because there's a lot of talk around Chris Beard, the outstanding head coach of the Texas Tech Red Raiders, and about how he kind of came out of nowhere. Yep. His head coaching before this was Angelo State. Is that right?
He was Little Rock.
Little Rock.
And then before that, Angelo State. Before that, McMurray.
Yeah. So this is a guy who has certainly climbed through the ranks. This is a guy who was is it fair to say, because you're the managing editor of Dave Campbell's Texas Basketball, is it fair to say that before he landed at Texas Tech, he was relatively, from a national perspective, an unknown?
Sure. No, he's a guy who, I mean, as early, I think it was 2012, he was at McMurray. Like, just like that, he was at is McMurray D3, I believe? At a D3 school. And then everywhere he's gone, which, if you haven't read the Carlos Silva's feature for the magazine, or Texas Basketball Magazine, head to texasbasketball.com. Fantastic story of how this kind of mercenary coach, he'd never been anywhere longer than 2 years, and everywhere he went, he won instantly. Yeah. And so obviously when the Tech job opened up, he had already accepted the UNLV job. UNLV was like, look, he'd been an assistant under Bob Knight, and so UNLV was like, look, we know you want to go there. We know that you're not going to be happy here now that job's open. So they let him go interview, accept the took the job at Tech, and this mercenary coach now has a home, right? And now we can finally see what he's really made of, because Little Rock is a good litmus test to how good of a coach he is. Before he got there, I believe Little Rock won 17 and 13 games the 2 years prior. They went 30-5 in his first season, upset Purdue, won the Sun Belt, upset Purdue in the first round of the tournament, and then he obviously got the Tech job. Since then, Little Rock has not won more than 15 games.
Wow.
Like, he was a one-year wonder, one-year job there, incredible job. And same thing with similar jobs with Angelo and McMurray as well, where it's just like, they're just winning now. Yeah. And it's insane, this guy. And he has the number one Tech's best ever recruit coming to campus next year in Jemias Ramsey from Duncanville. He's insane. It's really, really, his story is really remarkable. And he's still fairly young too. Like, it's an incredible job.
It really is. And so, but it got me thinking as a football guy. Yeah. About who could be next here in the state of Texas. Who could be that unknown guy, kind of speaking on a broader scale, that could end up being on a huge stage here pretty quickly. And I think that, immediately the first guy that kind of came to mind when I thought about that was a guy like Seth Luttrell. That whenever North Texas hired Seth Luttrell, I think that was a lot of people's first, maybe they knew. I think you would have to be kind of a football nerd to be like, oh, yeah, that's North Carolina's offensive coordinator. Right. Like, oh, yeah, I know him. Yeah. But this is a guy who, when he came to North Texas, you start digging into him and you go, okay, well, this guy kind of knows what he's doing. And obviously the success he's had there is already got him, in talks with, kind of linked to other bigger jobs, a guy who could be heading up there. But to me, there are three guys that I think we could be talking about down the road. And inevitably, one thing that's interesting is inevitably you kind of have to talk about younger coaches, right? For example, yesterday I was talking I'm writing the Lamar preview for Dave Campbell's Texas Football. And so I was on the phone yesterday with Mike Schultz, the great Mike Schultz down there at Lamar. And what he's doing down there at Lamar, by the way, is unbelievable.
Sure.
This was a program that was disbanded for 20 years. Then it comes back, and it is just it's Southland cannon fodder is what it was for a long time. And he goes, in 2 years, he takes them to their first FCS playoff berth. The problem, though, and Mike Schultz even admitted to it yesterday on the phone, he goes, I'm more of a mature coach.
Yeah.
He's an older guy. He's a guy who's bounced around a little bit. He's landed there at Lamar, and he's doing an unbelievable job. But this is probably not a guy who I think is going to make that jump, because inevitably coaches, if you're talking about these guys that fit that Chris Beard mold of kind of jumping onto the scene, I think you're talking about younger guys. So with all due respect to guys like that, there are three guys that immediately come to mind. I think the obvious one, in my opinion, is Eric Morris.
Right.
I
was going to say, yeah.
What he's doing down there at Incarnate Word is incredible. And again, helping to turn around what was a program that was awful. Awful. He was the AFCA Regional Coach of the Year last year. He was the Southland Coach of the Year last year. He was an Eddie Robinson Award finalist. This was a guy who took over a team that was 1-10 in 2017, and to go 6-4, conference championship, a playoff appearance.
And I believe they have the top offense in the conference,
Yes.
like dethroning Sam Houston of that title.
Yes.
Like, that's pretty impressive, too.
Absolutely. And so to go there, and by the way, the Southland Conference is a really good FCS conference.
Oh, sure.
There's a reason why they always get multiple teams in the playoffs. And so for me, Eric Morris is the first guy who kind of jumps out. Obviously he's a guy who was at Texas Tech before then. He's a former Texas Tech receiver, and a guy who I think is going to be a name to keep an eye on.
Right.
That was the first one that sprung to mind. Another one, and I think he's starting that climb. I think with his recent new job, there is our buddy Colby Carthel. This is a guy we've talked up a long time. I think when we love Dana Dimmel out there at UTEP, but I think that when the UTEP job came open,
we were like, take the risk.
We were all of us were all on board about, wow, like here's a guy who will come to your place that you can help to build into a star, but Colby Carthel is now at Stephen F. Austin and is going to do work down there.
Really excited to see what he can bring there.
You can see the recruits that he's already bringing in. This is a guy who has a national championship there at A&M Commerce, and a guy who the stock is only going up for Colby Carthel.
Sure.
That's another guy that I think could be in that Chris Beard mold. And then one more that I want to kind of bring up, and maybe one that I don't think people maybe pay a whole lot of attention to, is Jesse Burleson at Hardin-Simmons.
Ooh.
So he is now in his 8th season there at Hardin-Simmons. This is a guy who has taken Hardin-Simmons to 3 straight playoff appearances. They go 9-2 for the 3rd straight year. This is a guy who has produced 8 All-Americans in 11 seasons with the Cowboys. A guy that I don't think is getting enough love to, as far as being that guy. He's a Hardin-Simmons guy. He
probably because of the team he's stuck in the conference with.
I think that's part of it.
Sure.
Because inevitably, when you're stuck with the Mary Hardin Baylors of the world, you're not going to get the love. But when you talk about the Division III level, Pete Fredenberg is obviously in a class by himself, right? But much like we were talking about with Mike Schultz, Pete Fredenberg probably not going anywhere.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, love him, but he's an older guy. He's probably going to retire there. Yeah. Whenever he's done coaching there, he's probably just done coaching, period. Here's a guy in Jesse Burleson, rather, that I think could be one of the next big things there at the next level when he gets a shot at a bigger school. So those are guys.
I got one more.
Yeah.
That I was waiting for you to see. I was kind of hoping you would name him, but can I interest you in one? Adam Durrell at Abilene.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's done an
Goes from
excellent
Northwest
job too.
Missouri State, wins some titles there. ACU was like, let's check it out. Let's see what we got. 6-5, 2-9 his first season, 6-5 last year. We'll see what he has going forward, but I believe mid-40s age range too, young guy. So
young
like,
enough, yeah.
Well, and I know ACU was super fired up when they hired him.
Sure.
That was a guy, again, a winner at the lower level, get that shot there. And so, yeah, I think you're right. So, Max, you pinged me and said, let's do high school.
We gotta do high school, too.
If we're talking about guys, now, are you talking about guys who are going to win at the highest level in high school, or are you talking about guys who could be jumping up and grabbing high school jobs?
Let's do it this way.
Yeah.
They are names you're going to hear a lot more often, whether they become fixtures in the high school football world as big prominent winners or they move on to the next level. I don't want to put that on a coach, right?
Sure.
We don't know if guys want to go to college or not, right? There are
Yeah.
guys who definitely want to stay at the high school level, but I think there's a younger group of coaches, especially the last couple of years, I think we've talked about a bunch of them in this office, who, when you look at them, you're like, these guys are either going to turn the programs they're at into consistent powers and become those names that we talk about every year, or they're going to keep moving up, and who knows how high they'll go.
Yeah.
Right? And I think one of the first two that come to mind are the ones that we saw at State this year in Eric Peavy and Josh Gibson. Right?
Sure.
Oh, sure.
I think you're exactly right. I've said to anybody who will listen that Beaumont Westbrook ain't going away as long as Eric Peavy's there.
Right.
I think he's an unbelievable coach. What he's been able to do there, I think, is impressive. Josh Gibson, we've sung his praises over and over and over. Yeah. This is a guy who I think is going to be, is going to be in the mix for a long time.
Yeah.
Other folks, this is a guy who's entering his first year as a head coach, and so this is a projection pick. I think Joseph Sam's going to wreck shop at Fort Penn Hightower.
Nice.
This is a guy who was an assistant, I believe, defensive coordinator at Mansfield Legacy, getting his first head coaching job down there at Fort Penn Hightower. I think that's a name you're going to know.
That's a bold pick. I like that one.
I think Kwame Cavill at Waco High is another name you're going to know.
Yeah.
Our buddy John Fish at Bonham.
John Fish is one, for sure.
I would add in a guy like, I think Julio Lopez at El Paso Eastwood.
Yeah, interesting one.
And that's a guy, because of his background, that's a guy that if you want to peg him as the guy who, because he's still really young, if I remember. I think he's, if I may, I think he's like my age. But he's still pretty young. If you want to put him on that track where he's going to get picked up as a receivers coach somewhere and then eventually be an offensive coordinator and then get a small college coaching job, and by the time, if in 15 years, if you want to tell me that he's an FBS head coach, I'd buy it.
Yeah,
I really would.
Another one in that mold, I'd definitely throw Marcus Shavers in there.
Yes.
Oh,
absolutely.
That's a good one.
Huge college ties. He's already moved up to a 6A program. And if he just stayed and built McKinney into a monster, I wouldn't be surprised.
Right. Yes, yeah. I think you're exactly right. One more I'd probably throw out there. Actually, the guy who took over for Marcus Shavers. I should throw Joe Cluley out there.
That's fun.
At Lubbock Estacado. I think that this is a guy who's in that mix and a guy that is in that young mold, but obviously had great success in his first year there at Lubbock Estacado. I think he's a name to keep an eye on.
Can I throw out one more that I think is easy to forget because we just kind of accept that he's there and don't think twice about his age? Riley Dodge.
Oh, yeah.
Daniel Agnew in our comments, I'm going to give him credit for shouting it out, but he's right. I think we just assumed Riley was going to be fine, which is kind of ridiculous for someone his age at that kind of program. All I did was take Southlake 4 rounds deep.
I mean,
I know that's the expectation there, and I know that's why they hired him, and they believe that from him. But at that age,
and that's another guy, because he's 30 now.
Yeah.
And that's another guy that, again, because of his pedigree and because of what he did as a player, because of his bloodlines, like you can – obviously Graham Harrell had more success at the college level than Riley Dodge did. That's not a knock. That's just Graham Harrell's one of the greatest quarterbacks in college football history.
Right.
But there are so many parallels there.
Yep.
And a guy who is renowned as an offensive wizard, another guy that I would not be surprised if a college comes calling and say, hey, we want you to come be a position coach, or we want you to come be an assistant, or we want you to come be a coordinator pretty soon, because he fits that mold of the young coach. So that's kind of something I was thinking about last night.
I think what about Frank Sandoval?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
He's a guy who's like, you just talk to a bunch of coaches they're all
Frank.
All see a star.
I will tell you, I keep teasing it, but one of the things that we're doing in the magazine is this kind of anonymous coaches poll where we're asking coaches, and one of the questions we ask is, who's the most underrated coach in the state? And I've seen Frank Sandoval's name pop up a couple times. That's a guy who I think coaches know coaches more than like we do.
Right.
And kind of game recognized game.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of coaches are looking at him and saying that's a guy who knows what he's doing. And yeah, so it's interesting. It's a conversation that will probably go on and on. But
for sure.
On the heels of Texas Tech's historic run to a state or to a national championship game, we wanted to make sure we mentioned some of the football coaches we think could be the next big thing.